actually, I got to tell the story to Tom Woods, which was really cool when I met him for the first time. So I didn't know it at the time, but when I was a sophomore in high school, I was kind of stranded at a Barnes and Noble. My mother had left me at a Barnes and Noble in Fresno, and I used to, while she ran errands and did whatever, and I started perusing through stuff, and I picked up a book, and it was The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. And I started just kind of thumbing through it, and I just kind of skimmed it, and I was like, this is really interesting. And so I started reading it from beginning to, so I was about a quarter of the way through, I think, by the time my mother came and picked me up. And I said, okay, you abandoned me here. You need to buy me this book. And so she's like, all right, whatever. So I had that book, and that book, for those people that don't know, is written by Tom Woods. I didn't know Tom Woods. I didn't know. I found the title fascinating, and I started reading it, and it made a lot of sense. And it was just like really interesting to find out this history and I was very into history back then. I mean, I am now still, but reading it, and I read it, and I was just like, wow. So that made me more of that kid in high school. When I started questioning the narrative and doing that kind of stuff, I became that kid, but I didn't really know like that this was tied into libertarianism or whatever. So I stumbled across the Tom Woods podcast. I think it was 2014 or 2015 is when I stumbled across this. And I didn't really realize that it was that Tom Woods. And at some point in time, I think I'd been listening to him for a few months, and he mentioned The Politically Incorrect Guide. And I thought to myself, I was like, no way. So I went down to my bookshelf, and I found my book, and I was like, oh, it's the same Tom Woods. And it was kind of one of those aha moments that was just really cool. So I reread it, and it was just really funny to see it now in this light as someone that kind of knew what libertarianism was. So shortly after I discovered Tom Woods and Dave Smith and some of the Liberty podcasters, I became an anarchist. So I became an anarchist in about 2014, 2015. But even then, I was one of those armchair guys. So, I was a philosophy major, which was already bad. And then now, you kind of discover libertarianism. So you naturally think that you know more or are better than other people. So I would just sit there and read my books. So, started reading Rothbard and Mises and all this other stuff, Ron Paul. And so I started sitting there reading this stuff. And I said, political activity isn't for me, but the philosophy really speaks to me, and I get it now. And this is where it's at. And it wasn't until COVID hit in 2020. So I had just hit my stride as far as career went. I was in tech. I was doing well. I was applying for a promotion. And then COVID happens, or the government's response to COVID happens, rather. And I was part of the first round of tech layoffs in 2020. So I got laid off. I think it was April 7th, 2020. And that changed my entire outlook on everything. That's when I started following the Mises Caucus a little bit more closely. I started paying more attention to the LP and what was going on, because then it became clear to me that I couldn't just, it was all fun and games to sit there and read when things don't affect you, right? Nothing was affecting me then, really. Things were happening 3,000 miles away. California is always going to be California, so whatever. But it was the stereotypical armchair libertarian philosopher that would just read his books and say, oh, all of you guys doing stuff, that's so dumb. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to matter. And what are you doing this for? But when that happened, I really started paying attention. I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I started listening to more podcasts, reading more books, and it kind of came to the conclusion that I had to do something. And that's when I, for better or for worse, started following things a little bit more closely about internal politics within the LP itself. And I fully kind of drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and got bought into it after meeting Angela McArdle for the first time down in San Juan Capistrano during a speakeasy event that was happening in 2021, I believe. So that's when I finally said, my infamous last words to her, for better or for worse, were, hey, I've been following this for a long time. I'm ready to do, what do you need me to do? How can I help? And that's how I am where I am now. Had I not said that, so anyone that wants to be angry at me or hate me for whatever reason for my involvement in the LP now or the Mises Caucus, you have Angela McArdle to blame or to thank, because she immediately got to work and said, I'm going to capitalize on this enthusiasm, and he's going to start doing some stuff. So that's kind of how that involvement happened anyway.
Yeah, and there's a page on Facebook, the page where we complain about Angela or whatever it is. So if people want to address this, you can publicly.
You can.
Twitter's always great too.
Yeah, you can tweet at her. She loves unsolicited advice and getting tagged. So definitely do that, and go onto the I think it's called the Facebook page where we complain about Angela. I think it's its literal title. So if you complain and say Adrian is the worst, I hate him, and it's all your fault if you'd never met him in San Juan Capistrano and told him to get involved and do stuff and influenced him. He never would have done this stuff. So you have her to blame, people. You have her to blame. She has been just like this steadfast beacon of liberty that is nonstop and is doing way too much at any given time. But those infamous last words were the ones that either bit me in the ass or put me in this position for better or for worse. Again, just asking her how I could help. And I got this really cool at the gala at the convention. I got the Activist of the Year award, which is really cool. It's a very nice honor. And I dedicated this to Angela because I would not have done any of the stuff that I've been doing had it not been for her. So I just wanted to give her a shout out. And I've been very fortunate to have her as a mentor throughout the last couple of years and as an influence and as a friend. So it's just, it's very nice to see her be LNC chair and really advancing and seeing the same vision that we've always had for the party, which is to make it a professional vehicle in which to advance, liberty. So.
Yeah, she's the best. She's my friend. I can't believe all the things that this person does, what Angela does. She has a baby now, too, on top of being the chair and giving people legal advice all the time and always working and putting out content and appearing on podcasts and being in me. Like, I don't know. I really don't know how she does it. And sometimes I wonder, is it like just my perception of her and her general reputation among our circles that she's this working person 24 hours 7 nonstop, but she really is kind of that. Like, she really is that. It's really like crazy.
She's honestly the one of the hardest working people I've ever met, if not the hardest working person I've ever met. And she really stretches herself. She will never say no, and that's her best quality. And her worst quality, arguably, is that she's always available and will always take a phone call from anybody that needs to talk to her. She's always going to drop everything she can to help. I mean, obviously she prioritizes, but she's just, I don't know how she does it, and we're talking about Catholicism earlier. There's some saints who have been known for bilocation. So bilocation is, there have been documented cases of some saints that have been in 2 places at once. And I almost kind of think that she has whatever the libertarian equivalent of that is. Maybe she has a doppelganger. Maybe there's more of her and we just don't know. It almost seems impossible for one person to do so much.